Hi everyone, today I'm with Bonnie Dilber from Zapier and we'll be talking about effective and zero cost ways to build a brand. And that will be an interesting topic because Zapier is a big company, it's famous, and everybody heard about Zapier at some point, has a lot of money, obviously, but also Zapier is a bootstrap company, so we went very far without raising. So I guess that's this DNA of trying to find very effective ways to do things. And today we'll see how you do this in recruiting. So thanks a lot for being here, Bunny. I would also recommend that everybody follows Bunny on LinkedIn because she posts great content, and that's how I first heard about you, Bunny. So thanks a lot for accepting my invitation to be on A Players today. Can you maybe start by introducing yourself and Zapier for people that don't follow you on LinkedIn yet?
Absolutely. And thanks for the great intro. So, my name's Bonnie. I am the recruiting manager for the business recruiting team at Zapier and have been here for just around a year, but have worked in recruiting, in education, and nonprofits for 8 years prior to joining Zapier. So, been in that space for quite a while and love my job. Zapier is an amazing company, as Robin said, that I think is unique in that we've really kind of bootstrap from the start with very little uh, fundraising. And I think that is really a part of like we try to do more with less, like where we can, even though we have the resources, like we want to keep that, put it back into the business as much as possible. And so it helps encourage us to get creative. And we say, build the robot. We're also a company focused on automation and trying to democratize access to automation for everyone through low and no code solutions. And so I think that idea of like, automating and figuring out how to get things like working for you without as many inputs is just like kind of core to who we are. So those are kind of some of the principles I try to keep in mind when I think about employer branding.
And Zapier is really that like typical fast growth startup. I see that you're about 1,000 employees on LinkedIn now. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're at about 850 or so.
Okay. And that was over 10 years, right? Created in August
Yeah.
2012. Okay. So that's
Yeah.
impressive without raising funds and still fast growth.
Most of that growth has been the last couple of years. When I joined last November or November of 2022, we were about 550. So seen some good growth just in the time I've been here.
Yeah. I remember meeting with Wade during Y Combinator and he told us the
Oh,
Zapier
cool.
story and it really stuck with me.
Oh,
And
very cool.
I believe that this DNA of doing more with less is just getting back in style now. So a lot of people will be interested in
Exactly.
effective and not so much as like 6 months ago. So that's very timely to that recording now. The reason why I reached out to you in the first place and then I realized there was a lot to uncover and you had a lot of initiatives like this was because of your LinkedIn content and not the post that you were doing, though that's interesting as well for the employee brand. And we can talk about this. But the webinars that you were doing where you interviewed a person in a team and have them talk about Zapier. So can you tell us a bit more about
Yeah,
that project, how that came to life, what that required from you? Because that again, very cost
absolutely.
effective. So
Yeah, I love this as a strategy. And just to just sort of like back up around what has happened is like other tech companies, we of course have wanted to scale back hiring as well. We have not fortunately had to do any sort of layoffs, but we are also trying to be really responsible with our growth. And so we have all of these people I'm constantly reached out to by people who want to work with us. And yet we've had fewer and fewer opportunities. And at the same time, I think a lot of companies are making huge mistakes when they lay off their entire talent acquisition teams because your employer brand still matters. You are going to need to start hiring, even if things are slow today. They're not going to be slow 6 months from now. And a lot of these companies are going to have to be in rebuilding mode. And at Zapier, like my thought is we want to be ready to go. When we need people, we want to have lots of people chomping at the bit to work with us. And so you have to continue to engage people even when you don't have opportunities for them today. My LinkedIn, if any of you have tried to message me, you'll probably see I'm not great at responding. It takes me a long time. Some days I get 100 messages or more and I just can't like keep up with them. And so I wanted to find more efficient ways to connect with people and came up with this LinkedIn Live idea where every week we pop an hour. I put up an event for an hour and hop on because it's something new. I just wanted to start with members of our team and we talk a little bit about their story, A topic, for example, this week we're talking about transitioning from the education sector into other fields like tech, which is something I did and another one of our team members did. So we'll be talking about that on today's call. Next week, we'll be talking about bouncing back from layoffs with a team member who was laid off a year ago before joining us. And so those are some examples of topics, but we just get on, we chat a little bit, and then we turn it over to the audience and answer questions they have, which are often, they might be about working at Zapier. Often it's just about their career search or advice for how to stand out to recruiters, just whatever's on their mind. But it's a really good way to connect with people. Those then become names that I'm familiar with. And so I know I'm going to be more likely to engage with them because I recognize them now. And they are going to be more interested in us because they feel this personal connection to people on our team and they know our stories a little bit more intimately. And so it's costs nothing, takes almost no prep, no special equipment. You're not even on camera. You just hop on LinkedIn. It's right there built into the tool and chat with people. And it's a really great, easy way to engage and nurture your audience.
That will be a very technical question, but we have been doing webinars on LinkedIn, and that required using a third-party streaming tool. We
Yes.
used Restream. So do you do this, or can you do this on LinkedIn now?
So I am using the LinkedIn tool, which is an audio only tool, which personally I
Um,
like because I can like wander around my office or, don't even have to be, you don't even have to worry about how you look. And I think it also makes it easy for people to join. They're not on camera. It's on Zoom. Obviously, a lot of those third party platforms, you're not seeing your audience either, but we're using the LinkedIn audio. I think as we grow, we might potentially, if we want to test out some other tools, but I think the LinkedIn platform is really easy to use. And the audio only seems to be working pretty well for us.
wow, it's so easy to get started, right? Like
Yeah,
Twitter Spaces or Clubhouse style, and boom, you're live,
exactly.
you talk,
Yeah.
engage with
Anyone
people.
can do it. And people really join. I mean, we've been averaging over 100 attendees for each call.
Wow. And how long does it last? It's about 30
We've
minutes,
been
right?
doing
One
them
hour.
for an hour.
Okay, 1 hour, and then you'll engage with about 100 candidates, keep them warm over time, and that costs
Yeah.
really nothing.
Yeah, it's a very easy strategy. And I mean, I think right now, if you and I wanted to, we could go click the live button on our LinkedIn's and go live and people could hop on and chat with us. You literally don't even have to like create an event for it. We do, but it's the easiest thing in the world to do.
Okay, so anybody can do this. So you're mostly building content for a very broad audience, from my understanding, like how to bounce back after layoffs, or well, that be again. So that's very broad. That's not specific to like business roles or engineering. Would you recommend doing something that's broad, or rather narrow it down to a niche, maybe the niche that you're targeting as a recruiting team?
Good question. So in this case, for the broad series, it's really come and chat with us. And I've always pitched it as we're happy to talk to you about kind of three things. One, working at Zapier. Two, anything that will help you in your job search. And three, literally anything else on your mind. So far, all of the questions have pertained to those top two. But if people want to come on and ask me for my favorite ice cream flavor, I'm happy to chat about that too. But we've really tried to frame it as like, you can come talk to us about anything. And kind of keep it casual and open. However, for each week's guest, I've been highlighting a little bit about something that we're planning to talk about. And so that way, if people do have a specific interest area, that might help them like realize they want to come for this one. Like this week, I do have a technical recruiter. So I do mention that. So people interested in those roles might be more inclined to come. And then I'll be expanding. Right now, I've been focusing on highlighting members of our TA team. I think that's also a good way. I have a pretty solid following on LinkedIn. Some of our talent acquisition team members do, some don't, but this is a good way. After each call, they are getting lots of connection requests. And so it's helping people know who to go to because often they'll come to me and I'm not a recruiter. I don't hire for anything personally. I just manage recruiters. And so it's also a good way for our team to start building their own kind of brand and their own personal connections that will help them do their work more effectively. And so, yeah. And then I'm planning to kind of move on to incorporating people on different hiring teams in the months ahead so that again, we're just kind of building those more authentic connections.
And how do you get people? So you said that you get about a bit more than 100 attendees per event. That's
Yeah.
is that one event every week? Is that every week?
We've been doing one a week. Yeah.
One a week. Okay. And you have one today, right? 1 p.m.
Yeah. I've got one today at 1 o'clock Pacific.
All right. And how do you get people join the events? Do you invite them on LinkedIn?
I have not directly invited people. I really try to avoid this ever feeling like I'm spamming people, but I do a post for each event, and then usually the guests will do a post as well. And so, when you create the event, you can do a post highlighting what's going to go on at the event. So that has driven engagement. I have a link tree, and I put the link for the upcoming LinkedIn Live there, which I'm not entirely sure, but that does get some clicks. So I imagine we're getting some attendance. And then the other thing that happens is when you go live, LinkedIn announces it to people who follow you. And so a lot of people then organically join. So what I've noticed is going into an event, we might have somewhere in the range of 80 to 100 RSVPs, and then it jumps up like right at the start of the call. You get a whole influx of additional people. And of course, not every RSVP is going to show up, but I think you can see at the end of it about how many people ultimately clicked on like join. And it's been somewhere in the 400 plus range. So that means even if at any given point we've had maybe, 100 or 120, 130 attendees on the call, more people either like saw it, considered it, clicked, went into the event, RSVP, that sort of thing. So it is a really just good and easy way to engage people.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's not even using LinkedIn invites. So when we did our
Yeah, I don't
LinkedIn
directly invite
webinars,
anyone.
when we did our webinars, we used LinkedIn invites, and you can actually send 1,000 invitations per week per account.
Oh, wow.
That's
Okay.
huge. And we got a very good acceptance rate, like 10% or something like this. So
Okay. And I
that's
might
a good
test
thing.
that out. I'm always fearful of coming across, pushy. I think I try very much on LinkedIn to be as authentic as possible and have people like opt in to engagement. And so I'm always hesitant to start kind of pushing people to
I understand.
engage if they don't want to, even though I know that those are really good strategies that we should be using. So I need to test it out myself.
Yeah. Well, people listening to us might want to try this because it's working, and they also might not have your existing network, and that's a one of the things that you recommend doing as well to build a very effective and low cost employer brand is to build your presence on social media, and you have been very very successful at doing this. Can you give us a few hints, a few tips?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I'll say is I am very new. I don't, if you go look at like any of my social media outside of LinkedIn, I'm not like a person who has a ton of followers or anything like that anywhere. And I didn't start getting active on LinkedIn until basically exactly a year ago. At the start of 2022, I was new at Zapier. I had never worked in tech before. I felt like my networks were all basically teachers, and I needed it to look different in order to help me do my job. And so I said, okay, I better start posting on LinkedIn. And it really grew very organically just by posting. I initially was doing about 3 times a week, and then kind of bumped that up to every weekday and even weekends. And now I post every single day, sometimes twice a day. And so that is like really what it's about, is like consistent posting, engaging with people, engaging with other people's content, following people in your same sort of niche. So I, started following other people who were recruiting in tech, commenting on their posts. I made sure never to try to push my own company or anything like that in their posts. Again, I try to be authentic. And so I'm not going to go on a post that's doing well and say, hey, don't work at that company, come work at Zapier instead. But just commenting and saying, oh, this, great, I love this insight that you shared, is enough to then get people to come check out your profile and check out your company. And so really just kind of grew very organically, but pretty quickly.
What's your advice for me first? Because I'm sure I'm posting as well every day. But do you have any tips like on how to get more inspiration, how to get good ideas, what content works, what doesn't, how to engage with the community? What's the advice like how to get started, and then for more advanced people, how to progress?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things I see is a lot of people take the approach of really trying to sell their product or their company. I typically don't. One of the things that I love is I will often post things and not say one thing about Zapier. I won't even say anything about my company, and I'll have people like a few weeks ago, I had a message that I loved because they were like, "I don't know if you meant that post as an advertisement for Zapier, but it made me really want to work at Zapier." And I was like, "Great, it's working then," because I try to share like my thoughts on the workplace, and it gives people, they draw the conclusion that where I work is probably like a good place to work because what I'm describing sounds like a place they want to work and I am happy at my employer. But I let them make those inferences rather than constantly like selling my employer directly, or a product directly. I will sometimes share how, like, I do post for other content every now and then. I did one earlier today, and my approach there was more to talk about a problem that I have and, kind of mention how this product solved it, but it wasn't like a blatant, here, let me sell you on this specific product and tool. Because I think people do, again, want to have more authentic engagement and they know when they're being sold to. And so
Mm.
I don't really want to be like a salesperson. And so I try to more take that approach of talking about like challenges in the workplace and solutions and sort of embedding within that products or, my company, things like that. I also think like making sure that all of your content is not about like the exact same thing. Meaning if all you're doing is selling your product or pushing your company, I just think people see you as a salesperson versus I get the highest engagement when I'm sharing my thoughts on the workplace more broadly. But then that is like an engaged audience that when I do want to push a role, they're going to engage with it because I've built up the engagement with them through things that are more accessible to them. And so I think trying to have like broader appeal, I guess. So I do talk a lot about, I probably talk about some controversial content that isn't everyone's cup of tea, but I talk a lot about layoffs. I talk a lot about crappy management practices that I see happening, those sorts of things. But I think that really is content that resonates with people and builds like trust and again, like authentic engagement. And then I'll also say if you're struggling with content ideas, a big thing for me is reading LinkedIn news. You'll probably see multiple times a week
Mm.
that I just say, I read about this on LinkedIn news. Here are my thoughts. Or I'll find a post that's like going viral and therefore appears on my feed. And I'll say, I saw this really popular post. Here is my perspective on that issue. Um, and so that's just like such an easy way to be a part of a conversation and bring your own perspective or insight to it.
Good idea. I also read a lot of Twitter, but I don't know if I should read that much. And can you share maybe a few like numbers on the input and the output because we're talking about effective, so that's supposed to be low input. Feels like you still spend some time writing your post. You at least it looks like it reading your post. Do you have any
Yeah.
idea how much of this work week it takes? And can you like how do you measure the results? There could be number of views, engagement, or do you have any way to track? I don't know, like actual results for the company for Zapier if you have actual hires that have been made through these content that you can attribute to the content.
Yeah. So in terms of tracking the efficacy of content, I probably spend on any post I do between 5 minutes and 20 minutes is probably a long time to spend on a post. Writing comes pretty easily to me. I'm a decent writer. And so I am fortunate on that front. I am not a person that plans out my content for better or worse. There's bad things to that too, but that's just not my style. I literally like write them off the cuff and like based on what's going on in the moment. But I know some people do plan it out and that works for them. And I average last across all of 2022, my average views or impressions is what LinkedIn will call it, or a lot of what social media calls it. My average was about 75,000 per post. And in the last, as of just 2023, it's actually 200,000 per post. But again, we're early in 2023 and I had a post that went really viral last night. So that's pulling
That
the
is
numbers
fun.
up a bit. Yeah. So we're off to a good start in 2023. And so those are a lot of people who are seeing the content who, you can also see on LinkedIn how many people come to your profile. This time a year ago, I was getting maybe 10,000 people on my profile every 90 days. Now it's 60, 65. I think the last time I checked, 65,000. So that's a lot of people. I mean, your employees that's like not bad for a website. And so if you can have employees that are doing that and you've got all of those people, if they've got your website on their profile, those are a lot of people that you can drive to your website. So yeah, I think if people start just like kind of thinking about LinkedIn in that way, it's a really easy and again free. I have spent $0 on my LinkedIn other than I have an analytics tool that I didn't even get until December of last year. And my work pays for it, fortunately, because I have a software budget. So I still have not spent any money, but that's like the only money I have spent on my LinkedIn is getting an analytics tool. And you don't have to do that.
That's if we put numbers behind this. When we did ads on LinkedIn, the average cost per 1,000 impressions is around, if I remember correctly, it should be around this ballpark, $10 per 1,000 impressions, maybe a bit more, maybe a bit
Yeah,
less.
that's what I've seen as the average. Yeah.
So when you spend 5 to 20 minutes to post and get 75,000 impressions, then that's
$750 worth of
yeah.
free advertising for your company. Yeah. I think last year I had about 3 million impressions. No,
You must have way
it's
more
way
than
more
this.
than that. That's not right at
Because I
all.
had 2
Sorry.
million and I'm
I
nowhere
just
close
like
to your
looked at
numbers.
these numbers, but because I was kind of trying to do like a year end, I shared them on LinkedIn. I'm like literally looking at my tool right now. What did I have for last year? I'll have to figure it out. But yeah. It might have been something like 23 million or something. Might have been
Maybe more
last
like it.
year. And so somewhere around there.
It doesn't have to be this again, and I just don't want our audience to be discouraged because I had 2 million last year and I'm post every day and that's a lot of work. But even if you get less than this, like a few hundreds, a few hundred thousands or a few thousands, it's
Yeah,
still people that will engage with you, that will know you personally, people that are more likely to reply to your outreach. Should you reach out to them, should you hire them? So it helps the entire conversion funnel in the recruiting plan.
exactly.
And that's also another question. So maybe people are convinced about this and they want to start posting more on LinkedIn. Now we have given them a few tips on how to start. Tell about your experience, what you're seeing, read Twitter, read the LinkedIn news. How do you explain this to your management or to other people in the team who can be suspicious of the ROI?
So I am fortunate in that I haven't really gotten any sort of like questions or pushback at work. I know a lot of companies have, like, I've heard stories of people getting fired for their content, things like that. We talked about this at Zapier right when about halfway through last year when I was starting to have kind of a lot of posts. We kind of talked about it and decided to put together a social media policy so that people knew how to engage, and felt like this was something we wanted to embrace because it is really like free advertising. And we just realized like social media is not going anywhere. It is, people are going to be active on social media, whether you like it or not. And so either you support your people to do it and give them tools to do it effectively, or they're going to do it and you're going to end up kind of being like the bad guy that's trying to control them, because they're not just going to stay off social media. They're not just going to never talk about work. And I mean, the biggest thing I can say to an employer is if you like treat your people well, you don't need to worry about them. I mean, even if I wanted to talk negatively about my employer, I honestly couldn't because I'm hard pressed to really find anything that I find terrible at work. I love my job. I love the company I work for. I work with great people. So anything I share about my work experience is authentic. If I wasn't having a good experience, I wouldn't. And this is something we've also committed to is like, we're not going to try to force people to post. We're not going to say, hey, everyone go post about X today. Outside of pushing people to our once a year Zap Connect event, that's the only time we've shared with people, hey, this is a good thing to share. Other than that, any engagement you see from anyone at Zapier is authentic, because we want them to share because they feel moved to do so. And they feel like comfortable and supported to do so, not because we are paying them or incentivizing them or giving them scripts or telling them that they have to do this a certain amount of time, times a month or a year, anything like that. So I think if you hire good people and you trust them, then they are going to be assets to your company and represent your company well. And employers should focus on that versus trying to sort of control and engineer the messages of their people.
Sure. I agree with the theory, but unfortunately, probably not the case in 100% of companies. So, still wondering how to work when that's the case. So, we talked a lot about LinkedIn, especially. Do you post on Twitter as well?
I have a Twitter. I do not really post
Okay.
on it. I thought about trying to start getting active on Twitter a few months ago. And then I think I posted like 3 things and followed some people and then stopped again. I started a
Ah,
TikTok back in October, which I find fun. It's very similar content to LinkedIn. So
can you share a few numbers? Did you see the same type of numbers, like 23 million exposure?
no,
Or
not the same. For sure. I think I've had a couple of things get into, the 150 to 200,000 impressions. Um, and the average there is lower. I have 2,200 followers on TikTok compared to I think 96,000 on LinkedIn. So it's a very different, audience scale, but I will say I have had some really good candidates come through TikTok as well.
Hmm,
I had someone who we basically were like at the end of the interview process with and we're really excited about, and then the offer went to someone else before they were able to finish. So and that was I think within 2 weeks of joining they contacted me. So
nice.
and said, "We liked something you said." And I actually didn't mention where I worked, and they looked it up, like based on something that I shared about my work.
Cool. Yeah, a good advice in content is to build it once and then publish as many times as possible. Like
Yeah.
we're starting doing so this podcast we'll start doing it on YouTube as well. So we'll be hosting the audio
Yeah.
on YouTube as well. So that helps drives more. It's just zero cost for us and just
Yeah.
drives more listeners. So we could consider as well using Zapier Live. Is it? Yep. No, connect with
Or
Zapier.
LinkedIn Live. Yeah.
Could be hosted on like the podcast host as well,
Totally.
or YouTube could be another way to like even increase the return on the
Yeah.
investment.
I have a friend who does LinkedIn Lives and then as a podcast and then publishes the podcast. So you get two opportunities out of there. I post basically the same content. I write a LinkedIn post and then I go talk about the same topic on TikTok. It's all, same
Yeah.
amount of time. And
What else? So we talked a lot about social media. We talked about content, how to build very easy content. There's a lot of ways to do this. You do connect with Zapier on LinkedIn. People could also simply just like record videos, record Zoom meetings with the team, and then share that on LinkedIn or share that
yeah,
on YouTube. So there's a lot of ways to just create content and authentic content without investing a lot.
yeah.
Do you have any other tips and advice on how to build an very effective yet low cost employer brand?
Just get people active. They don't need to have like big followings. They don't need to have hit like the big numbers. I know the LinkedIn numbers I was sharing were really big, but to your point, you don't need those. We were getting people coming. One of my favorite stories is, and this was like first half of last year, I didn't have as big of a following at the time on LinkedIn. And I posted a job, and within um 2 hours we had over 600 applications for the job, and then the next morning we had over 1,000 and had to like close the role because we were so overwhelmed with applications, and that was based on posting it, sharing it on LinkedIn, and just saw like applicants come running for the role because they felt like they knew the people they'd be working with and felt like connected and excited about the company. And so I just like encourage people. You don't have to have a huge following to have huge impacts from engaging on any social media platform. So yeah, just like start getting active and don't worry less about the numbers and more about that authentic just engagement. And I think the numbers will follow if you're having fun and genuinely enjoying being on that platform. I also suggest that people employ like a talent community strategy. And so for us at Zapier, that is, we have these interest forms on our applications page, and um, people that way, when we don't have jobs that are relevant for them, they can apply, and we can reach out to them when we have jobs that are a good fit. And we've also started hosting some webinars for them. And so we've done one on resume tips and one on interviewing tips with some actual like interview practice that they got to do with recruiters. And we've had good success with those and like good interest and are going to continue to expand that series. I think the next one we're doing is on salary negotiations. So we're trying to, again, at a period where we know we're not hiring a ton, these are some really easy ways, and where our recruiting team doesn't have as much work to do as we used to. These are things that our team can work on. So they've built out the content for these webinars and, you know, managed our SVPs and all, and we have plenty of capacity to do that. But now it's content that can kind of run itself, where we just, now that it's all been built, we just hop on and do, you know, an hour webinar with whoever joins. And so those are ways that we're engaging our applicant pool so that when we do have jobs for them, they're going to be really excited because we have invested in them. And even if not, like, we've helped them be better applicants for other companies and hopefully help them in their job search. And they'll always hopefully think favorably of us. So they could become a customer in the future, even if they don't work for us. So I think that's like another, again, kind of low cost, no cost technically other than your time, strategy and way to engage people if you're not doing a lot of hiring.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And that's very important to understand that even though you're slowing down on hiring, you're still engaging with the community, still building the temple with the idea that in 6 to 12 months, well, you need to hire more. Then you have that warm talent pool already ready to go. And
Exactly.
that will be a huge competitive advantage. And I tell this all the time, and I tell companies to do this, especially in times of slowing down, because when you need to hire a lot, you don't have the time to nurture people. But when you don't hire so many people, then what do? You should nurture them. You should prepare for the next step.
Yeah. And those are great ways. Again, I mean, we have thousands and thousands of people in those talent communities. We pop them into our CRM, and then you can set up a nurture campaign. Takes a little bit of work, but you can have, you know, a set of every month. You can send out a newsletter or something like that, which we're not currently doing that, but that's one of the things we're going to try out in this year. And so again, just like really easy ways to stay top of mind for a lot of people. Yeah. Keep your company like top of mind and help build your brand.
Okay. And I wouldn't be a very good CEO/sales if I didn't send that hire to CRM. It does exactly this, and you can send newsletters and you can create forms so that people can just join the community. So just saying this, and I'm not ashamed because I'm supposed to be doing this. So
See,
and
good example of authentic sales of a product.
Exactly. You piqued my attention before, and that might be my final question. What is your favorite ice cream flavor?
My favorite. It's so boring because I really love a good vanilla bean ice cream. But yeah, that's often my go-to. So boring.
Strawberry for me. So
I like strawberry too.
Thanks, Bunny. It was great having you, and we'll
welcome.
keep on following
Thanks.
you on LinkedIn and TikTok, and we'll create
Awesome.
TikTok accounts for you.
Thanks so much for having me. It was great to chat.